I pulled into the property just as the sun started dipping behind the mountains. The GPS had crapped out 20 miles back, leaving me with Mildred George's handwritten directions and a whole lot of hope. 3 hours of dirt roads, unmarked turns, and second-guessing myself. My truck bounced over another pothole, and I wondered again if this job was worth it. But hell, 3 months without work changes your standards. The mill had closed in June and nobody was hiring. Not in Whitefish, not anywhere within driving distance. So when I saw the ad for a caretaker position, $2,000 a week, room and board included, I jumped on it. Even if it meant driving to the middle of nowhere. The road curved and suddenly the trees opened up. I hit the brakes. The place was massive, not what I'd expected. The main house sat on a rise, all glass and dark wood, 3 stories of windows reflecting the orange sky. Modern architecture, the kind you see in magazines. Must have been 10,000 square feet, easy. About 50 yards to the right stood a smaller building, still bigger than any house I'd lived in. That had to be the caretaker's cabin. I parked next to a black Mercedes and killed the engine. The silence hit me immediately. No traffic, no neighbors, no nothing. Just wind in the pines and my own breathing. The Mercedes door opened, and Mildred George stepped out. She looked exactly like she'd sounded on the phone. Professional, put together, like she'd never had a hair out of place in her life. Dark suit, gray hair pulled back tight, probably mid-50s. She walked over with purpose, heels clicking on the gravel. "Mr. Kennedy." Not a question. She knew who I was. "That's me." I climbed out of the truck, trying not to feel underdressed in my jeans and flannel. "You're punctual. Good." She turned toward the cabin. "This way." I grabbed my duffel from the truck bed and followed. The cabin had a covered porch with 2 chairs, looked like cedar siding. Nice place. Real nice. Mildred unlocked the door and led me inside. The interior was simple but comfortable. Open floor plan, kitchen to the left, living area to the right. Stone fireplace, leather couch, flat screen mounted on the wall. Through a doorway I could see a bedroom. "This will be your residence for the duration of your employment." Mildred set a manila folder on the kitchen counter. "Before we proceed, there are rules you must agree to follow." "Rules?" She opened the folder and handed me a typed sheet. "Please read this carefully." I took the paper. The header read "Caretaker Guidelines" in bold letters. Below that, a numbered list. 1. No visitors are permitted on the property. 2. Do not enter the main house. 3. Do not answer the door after midnight. 4. Keep all curtains closed after dark. 5. Ignore any sounds from the main house during nighttime hours. 6. The basement of the main house is strictly off limits. I read it twice. This is different. The owners value their privacy. Mildred's tone didn't invite questions. I'll explain each point to ensure clarity. She pointed to the first rule. No visitors means exactly that. No friends, no family, no one. You are the only person authorized to be on this property. For 6 months? That is the term of employment. Yes. I thought about Jasmine, my sister in Missoula. We usually got together once a month. But for $2,000 a week? Okay. Rule 2. You are not to enter the main house for any reason. Your duties involve only the grounds and exterior maintenance. The house has its own systems. What if there's an emergency, fire, or... Call the number I'll provide. Do not enter the house. She moved to the next line. Rule 3 is particularly important. After midnight, you may hear knocking at your door. Do not answer it. Do not look out the window. Do not acknowledge it in any way. Someone's going to knock on my door after midnight. Perhaps, perhaps not, she continued before I could ask more. Rule 4. Keep all curtains closed once the sun sets. This is for your own privacy and comfort. I glanced at the windows. Heavy curtains, I noticed now. Blackout style. Rule 5 relates to Rule 2. You may hear sounds from the main house at night. Music, voices, movement. Ignore them. The house has automated systems that sometimes activate. Automated systems, security features, lights, sounds, deterrents. She pointed to the last rule. And finally, the basement of the main house is completely off limits. That door remains locked at all times. You are not to attempt entry under any circumstances. I set the paper down. Ms. George, I need this job. I do. But this is unusual? Yes. The owners are particular people with particular needs. She pulled another paper from the folder. This is your employment contract. $2,000 per week, deposited each Friday. The cabin is fully stocked with food and supplies, replenished bi-weekly. You'll find a vehicle in the garage for any necessary trips to town. $2,000 a week, $8,000 a month. In 6 months, I'd have enough to start over anywhere. Get a place, maybe go back to school, figure out what came next. What exactly am I taking care of if I can't go in the house? The grounds require maintenance. There are trails to clear, a generator to monitor, general upkeep. The specific tasks are listed in the cabin. Your primary responsibility is simply to be present on the property. That's it. Just be here. That's it. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a black device about the size of a cell phone. This is a satellite phone. It has one number programmed, mine, for emergencies only. I took the phone, heavier than it looked. Any questions? About 1 million, but the number on that contract kept flashing in my head. $48,000, half a year's salary at the mill, and all I had to do was follow some weird rules and keep to myself. When do I start? You just did. She held out a pen. I signed. Mildred took the contract, left a copy for me, and headed for the door. The cabin has everything you need: food, supplies, entertainment. The garage is behind the cabin. You'll find the keys in the kitchen drawer. Town is 90 minutes away if you need anything additional. That's it? She paused at the door. Follow the rules, Mr. Kennedy. They exist for good reasons. Then she was gone, the Mercedes disappearing down the dirt road, leaving me alone with the silence and the strange list of rules. I walked through the cabin again, really looking this time. The kitchen was fully stocked, freezer full of meat, pantry lined with canned goods, even fresh vegetables in the fridge. The bedroom had a king-size bed, good linens, another TV. The bathroom had towels, soap, everything. In the living room, I found books, DVDs, even an old Nintendo. Somebody had put thought into this, made it comfortable for a long stay. I stepped onto the porch as darkness settled in. The main house loomed against the purple sky, windows dark, no lights, no movement, just an empty mansion in the middle of nowhere. The rules sat on the counter where I'd left them. I read them again, trying to make sense of it. Don't answer the door after midnight. Who'd be knocking way out here? Ignore sounds from the house. What kind of sounds? But $48,000 bought a lot of not asking questions. I closed the curtains as instructed, heated up a can of stew, and settled in for my first night. The first week passed easy enough. I woke when I wanted, usually around 7, made coffee, sat on the porch until the sun got too high. The property had trails running through the woods, and I spent hours hiking them, clearing fallen branches, getting to know the land. The isolation didn't bother me. After the noise and chaos of the mill, the silence felt good, peaceful. I'd always been comfortable with my own company, and now I had nothing but time to read, think, plan what came next. The main house stayed dark. I'd walk past it on my rounds, checking the generator housed in a shed out back, and I'd look up at those empty windows. Never saw movement, never heard anything, just a big, expensive tomb. I found the vehicle Mildred mentioned, a newish Ford Explorer in the garage. Drove to town once for fresh milk and eggs, even though the cabin had plenty. The trip took 93 minutes each way, most of it on dirt roads. I didn't see another car until I hit the highway. By the 8th night, I'd settled into a routine. Dinner at 6, usually something simple. Read until 10 or 11. Check that the curtains were closed. Brush my teeth. Bed. The satellite phone sat on my nightstand, silent and black. I was deep in a book, some thriller I'd found on the shelf, when the first knock came. 3 sharp raps on the door. I looked at my watch. 12:47. My heart jumped, but I stayed in the chair. Rule 3 echoed in my head. Do not answer the door after midnight. 3 more knocks, same rhythm, patient, measured. I set the book down and stood, then caught myself. Don't look out the window, Mildred had said. I backed away from the door instead, moved to the kitchen where I could see the entrance but stay out of sight. The knocking came again, harder this time. Who the hell would be out here? The nearest neighbor had to be 20 miles away. Nobody could find this place without directions, and even then it had taken me 3 hours in daylight. More knocking, insistent now. I thought about the satellite phone, but what would I say? Someone's knocking on my door. Mildred had been clear about the rules. This was expected. Maybe not normal, but expected. The knocking stopped. I waited, holding my breath. 30 seconds, a minute, then bang, 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 pounding now, hard enough to shake the door in its frame. The kind of knocking that says emergency, fire, someone's dying, open up right now. Every instinct told me to answer. Someone needed help. Had to. Why else would they pound like that? But the rules. I grabbed the satellite phone, gripped it tight. My thumb found the power button but didn't press it. Not yet. The pounding continued, rhythmic, mechanical almost, like someone hitting the door with the same force, same interval, over and over. Then it stopped. Silence filled the cabin. I stood frozen in the kitchen, phone in hand, waiting. A gentle tap, almost polite, then 3 more, soft, patient. This went on for an hour, sometimes pounding, sometimes gentle taps, sometimes that measured knock from the beginning. No voice, no hello or anyone home, just knocking. At 1:43, it stopped. I stayed in the kitchen another 20 minutes, waiting for it to start again. Nothing, just the hum of the refrigerator and my own breathing. I crept to the door, put my ear against it. No footsteps, no breathing, no sound at all from the other side. The curtains stayed closed. I didn't look out, didn't open the door, just stood there with the satellite phone, wondering what the hell I'd signed up for. I'd been at the property for 2 weeks when the footsteps started. It was around 10 that night. I'd closed all the curtains at sunset like always, checked the locks twice, made myself a sandwich. Normal routine. I was washing the dishes when I heard it, the unmistakable crunch of gravel outside. Someone was walking around the cabin, not running, not stumbling, walking. Slow and deliberate like they had all the time in the world. The steps came from the left side first, moving toward the back. Each footfall was measured, careful. Whoever it was, they weren't trying to be quiet. I turned off the water and stood there, hands dripping. The satellite phone sat on the counter where I always kept it after dark. But what would I tell Mildred? Someone's walking outside? That wasn't exactly an emergency. The footsteps continued along the back of the cabin. I could track their progress by the sound. Past the bedroom window, past the bathroom, heading toward the right side. They never sped up, never slowed down. Just that same steady pace. I dried my hands and moved to the center of the living room, away from all the windows. The curtains were closed tight, but I still felt exposed, like whoever was out there could see right through the walls. The steps reached the front of the cabin and paused, right outside the door. I waited. 30 seconds. A minute. My legs started to ache from standing so still. Then the walking resumed. Back the way they'd come. That same deliberate pace. Around and around the cabin, like they were patrolling. Or searching for something. I sat down on the floor in the middle of the room. Seemed like the safest spot, furthest from any window or door. The satellite phone was still in the kitchen, but I didn't want to move. Didn't want to make any sound that might attract attention. The circling continued. 10:30 became 11. 11 became midnight. Still those steady footsteps, never varying their route or speed. Sometimes they'd pause, always at the front door or near the bedroom window. But they always started up again. My back hurt from sitting on the floor. My mouth was dry, but I stayed put, listening to those endless footsteps grinding through the gravel, round and round, hour after hour. It wasn't until almost 2 in the morning that they finally stopped. One last pause at the front door, longer than the others. Then nothing. I waited another hour before I finally stood up, joints protesting. Made it to bed eventually, but I didn't sleep much. Kept listening for those footsteps to start up again. They didn't. Not that night anyway. 3 weeks in, I got caught in a storm. I'd been walking the property boundaries, checking for fallen trees or washouts. Part of the job, according to Mildred. The weather had looked fine when I'd left. Some clouds building to the west, but nothing serious. Montana weather can turn fast though. Should have known better. The first drops hit when I was about a mile from the cabin. Big fat raindrops that splattered on my jacket. Then the wind kicked up, bending the pines almost sideways. By the time the real downpour started, I was already running. Lightning cracked somewhere close, the thunder following instantly. The rain came in sheets, soaking through my jacket in seconds. I could barely see 10 feet ahead. That's when I noticed it. movement in my peripheral vision. Up and to the left, something dark against the storm clouds. Every instinct screamed at me to look up, to see what was moving up there, what could possibly be that big. But I remembered the rules. Keep your eyes down during storms. Don't look at the sky. I fixed my gaze on the muddy ground and kept running. My boots slipped in the wet pine needles. Water streamed into my eyes, but I didn't wipe it away. Didn't want to accidentally glance upward. The movement stayed with me, pacing me through the clouds. I could sense it even without looking. Massive, dark, wrong somehow. The air felt heavy, electric, not just from the storm. Another lightning flash lit up the forest. In that split second of brightness, a shadow fell across the ground in front of me. The shadow of something enormous passing overhead. Something that shouldn't exist. I stumbled, caught myself, kept running. The cabin finally came into view through the rain. I sprinted the last 50 yards and threw myself through the door, slamming it behind me. Stood there dripping and shaking for a good 5 minutes. When I finally worked up the courage to peek through the curtains, the storm was already moving off. The clouds looked normal again, empty. But I knew what I'd felt up there, what I'd almost seen. Week 4 brought the worst night yet. I woke at 2 in the morning to sounds from the main house. Not subtle sounds either. Furniture scraping across floors, doors slamming, footsteps. Multiple sets of footsteps, like a whole group of people walking around in there. I sat up in bed, instantly alert. The main house had been dark and silent for a month. Now it sounded like someone was rearranging the entire place. The satellite phone was on the nightstand. I grabbed it, thumb hovering over the call button. This had to qualify as an emergency, right? People in the main house, making that kind of racket. A door slammed so hard I felt it through the walls of the cabin. Then another. The footsteps grew louder, more frantic, running now, back and forth across what must have been the upper floors. I started to press the call button. Everything stopped. Not gradually, not one sound at a time. Everything just cut off mid-noise like someone had hit a switch. The sudden silence was almost worse than the sounds had been. I sat there holding the phone, fingers still poised over the button, waited for the noises to start up again. They didn't. The main house went back to being dark and dead. After an hour of silence, I finally set the phone down and tried to go back to sleep. Took a long time. A few evenings later, I saw the figure. I was making dinner, glancing out the kitchen window while the pasta boiled. The sun had just dipped behind the mountains, that in-between time when it's not quite dark yet. That's when I spotted it at the tree line. Tall. That was my first thought. Too tall, really. The figure stood perfectly still among the pines, but it was wrong somehow. The proportions were off, too thin for its height, like someone had stretched a person out. I immediately shut the curtains, all of them, moving quickly through the cabin. When I got back to the kitchen, I couldn't help taking another peek through a crack in the fabric. It hadn't moved, still standing in the exact same spot, facing the cabin. I couldn't make out any features in the dimming light, just that wrongly proportioned silhouette. I closed the curtain gap and stepped back. Turned off the stove, wasn't hungry anymore. Sat on the couch with my back to the windows and tried to read a book. Couldn't focus on the words. An hour passed. I had to know if it was still there. Just a quick look, I told myself. I went to the bedroom window, lifted the curtain edge an inch. Still there. Same spot. Same unnatural stillness. I checked again an hour later, and an hour after that. 3 hours total, and the figure never moved once, never shifted weight, never turned its head. Just stood there watching the cabin. When I finally worked up the courage to check a 4th time, it was gone. No sign it had ever been there at all. I didn't sleep well that night either. The next morning, I found the scratches. I was doing my regular property check, making sure everything looked normal around the main house. That's when I noticed the marks around the basement door, deep gouges in the wood like something had been clawing at it. They were fresh. The exposed wood was still pale, not weathered like it would be if they'd been there long, and they started about 3 feet up the door. Whatever made them had been trying to get in, or maybe trying to get out. I stepped closer to examine them. That's when I heard it, scratching sounds from below, slow, deliberate, like fingernails on wood, then breathing. Deep, ragged breathing that seemed to come from right behind the door. I backed away fast, nearly tripped over my own feet, getting distance between me and that basement entrance. The breathing continued, wet and labored. Something scraped against the door from the inside, long, slow drags that made my skin crawl. The padlocks on the door looked secure, the chain too. But those scratches on the outside, something had tried hard to get through, and whatever was making those sounds now wanted out just as bad. I finished my property check in record time and headed straight back to the cabin. Locked the door, checked it twice, tried not to think about what might be in that basement, or why it needed such heavy locks to keep it there. The isolation was getting to me by then. 4 weeks of this stuff, and I hadn't told anyone. Couldn't tell anyone, really. What would I say? The job paid too well to risk losing it over stories that sounded crazy even to me. I called Jasmine that night, just needed to hear a normal voice. "Hey, stranger," she answered on the second ring. "Was starting to think you'd fallen off the mountain." "Yeah, sorry. Been busy with work." "The caretaker thing? How's that going?" I looked around the cabin, curtains all closed, tight. "It's going. Quiet up here." "Too quiet, sounds like. You doing okay? You sound tired." She always could read me, even over the phone. "I'm fine, just, gets lonely sometimes." "You should come visit. Take a weekend, drive down to Missoula. We could grab dinner, catch up properly." The idea of leaving, even for a weekend, made my chest tight. What if Mildred called while I was gone? What if she found out? Maybe. I'll think about it. "Daryl." Her voice got that concerned tone I knew too well. "You sure you're all right? This job, it's not weird or anything, is it?" I almost laughed. Weird didn't begin to cover it. "No, it's fine. Just maintenance stuff. Nothing strange." "Because you sound, I don't know, different." "I'm good, Jazz, really. Just tired." We talked for another 20 minutes about normal things. Her job at the hospital, her boyfriend Mike, plans for Thanksgiving, regular life stuff that felt like it was happening on another planet. When we hung up, the cabin seemed even quieter than before. I started calling her more often after that. Every few days, just to check in. Never mentioned the footsteps or the figure or the sounds from the main house. Never said a word about what I'd seen in the storm or heard in the basement. Just talked about the weather, the property, normal caretaker stuff. It helped, hearing her voice. Reminded me there was a world outside this place. A world where people didn't circle your house at night and shadows didn't move through storm clouds. But I never told her the truth. How could I? She'd think I was losing it. Hell, sometimes I wondered if I was. The money, though. Every Friday, $2,000 hit my account like clockwork. $8,000 so far, with $40,000 more to come if I could stick it out. That's what I focused on during the long nights. Not the sounds or the shadows or the things that shouldn't exist. Just the money, and the countdown to when I could leave this place behind. I sat in the kitchen when the knocking started. Midnight on the dot, like always. 3 sharp raps that made me set down my coffee mug. But tonight felt different. Through the window, I caught movement at the tree line. That tall figure was back, standing perfectly still between 2 pines. Just standing there, facing the cabin. I got up and closed the curtains fast. The knocking came again, harder this time. 4 raps, then 5, then a pause. I moved to the center of the living room and sat down on the floor. The satellite phone lay on the coffee table within reach. Thunder rumbled overhead. I hadn't noticed the storm building, but now rain started hitting the windows. Lightning flashed, bright enough to light up the whole room through the curtains. From the main house came a sound I'd never heard before, not furniture scraping or doors slamming. This was deeper, from below, a grinding noise, metal on metal, the basement. The knocking at my door turned violent. Not just knocks anymore, full-on pounding that shook the whole frame. The door actually flexed inward with each hit. I scooted back a few feet, still sitting on the floor. Another sound from the main house, glass breaking. Lots of it, like every window on the ground floor shattering at once. The crashing went on for maybe 10 seconds before stopping. Lightning struck close enough that the flash and thunder came together. The whole cabin lit up white, and in that instant, I saw shadows moving past the windows. Multiple shapes, even though the curtains were closed, like something pressed right up against the glass. I grabbed the satellite phone. My thumb found Mildred's number, the only one programmed in. I held it there. Not pressing yet, just ready. The basement sounds got worse. The scratching I'd heard before turned into pounding. Heavy, rhythmic impacts, like something ramming against the door from inside. Between the impacts came this sound, not breathing anymore, growling, deep and wet and angry. The storm picked up. Wind hit the cabin hard enough to creak the walls. But mixed in with the wind, I heard something else. Voices, or something trying to be voices. Words I couldn't quite make out. That figure from the tree line. I felt it moving closer. Don't ask me how. I just knew. Even with the curtains closed, even without looking, I could feel it approaching. The air in the cabin changed, got heavier. My ears popped like I'd gone up in altitude. The pounding on my door got faster. The whole frame shook now, not just the door. Dust fell from the ceiling. I gripped the phone tighter but didn't call. Rule 3. Don't answer the door after midnight. Nothing in the rules about calling Mildred when things got bad. From the basement came a new sound. Wood splintering. Those padlocks and chains. Were they enough? The growling turned into something else. A roar, muffled by distance and walls but still loud enough to hear over the storm. Lightning struck again, even closer. The flash showed more shadows at the windows. They moved wrong, too fast and jerky, like film running at the wrong speed. One shadow had too many arms. Another was too tall for anything human. The thing from the tree line reached the cabin. I knew because the temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. My breath came out in clouds. Frost formed on the inside of the windows. I could hear it crackling. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to get up, get out, get away. But I stayed put, forced myself to breathe slow and steady, counted each breath. 1 in, 1 out, 2 in, 2 out. The rules. Focus on the rules. Don't answer the door. Don't look outside. Ignore sounds from the main house. Don't go in the basement. Keep curtains closed after dark. Don't enter the main house. 6 rules. 6 months. $48,000. I'd made it 5 months and 29 days. One more night. The basement door. I heard it give way. Not all at once, but board by board. Whatever was down there, it was coming up. The growling turned triumphant, excited, hungry. More glass broke in the main house. Upper floor windows this time. The wind howled through the new openings, making sounds that weren't quite wind. Those almost voices got clearer. They were calling something. A name, maybe. Not mine. The pounding on my door reached a crescendo. The hinges groaned. The top hinge actually pulled loose from the frame. I heard the screws stripping out of the wood. The door tilted inward at the top, held only by the bottom hinge and the deadbolt. I lifted the phone. My thumb touched the call button but didn't press. Not yet. The rules said nothing about not calling, but they also said nothing about calling. What would Mildred do if I called? Come out here? Tell me to hang tight? Fire me for not handling it? Thunder crashed directly overhead. The lights flickered, but stayed on. In the brief darkness between flickers, the shadows at the windows multiplied. Dozens of them now, pressed against every window, trying to see in or get in or both. The thing from the tree line circled the cabin. I heard its footsteps, not regular footsteps like before. These dragged and scraped like it had too many feet or not enough. It paused at each window, and the frost spread further across the glass. From the main house came running footsteps, but not on the upper floors like before. These came from ground level, moving fast, moving toward the cabin. I pressed myself lower to the floor. The phone shook in my hand. My thumb stayed on the call button, still not pressing. Hours passed like that, or maybe minutes that felt like hours. Time went strange. The pounding continued. The shadows danced. The storm raged. The thing circled, and whatever got out of the basement came closer. I counted breaths, focused on the rules, refused to break. 10,342 breaths. That's how many I counted before the first sign of dawn. A slight lightening at the edge of the curtains. Just a hint, but enough. The pounding stopped first, mid-strike, like someone hitting pause on a recording. The door hung crooked, top hinge destroyed, but it held. The shadows pulled back from the windows. The frost began to melt, leaving water trails down the glass. The thing outside stopped circling. I heard it moving away, back toward the tree line, those dragging, scraping footsteps getting fainter. The storm died like someone turned off a switch. 1 second wind and rain, the next second calm. The sudden silence felt louder than all the noise had been. From the main house, nothing. No footsteps, no growling, no breaking glass, just nothing. I stayed on the floor until real sunlight hit the curtains. Not dawn light, but actual morning sun. Only then did I stand up, joints screaming from being in one position so long. The satellite phone showed 6:47 a.m. I set it on the coffee table and walked to the door. The top hinge hung loose, screws pulled half out of the frame. The door itself had a slight bow to it, like something had tried to bend it in half. But it held. The rules held. I held. I'd survived by following every rule. At 8 a.m. exactly, I heard a car engine. Gravel crunched under tires. A door slammed. Mildred. I pushed myself up, wincing as my knees straightened. Every muscle protested. I made it to the window and pulled back the curtain an inch. She stood beside her black Mercedes in the same dark suit she'd worn 6 months ago. Her gray hair still pulled back in that tight bun. She looked at the cabin for a moment, then turned toward the main house. I shuffled to the door. The top hinge hung loose, screws half out of the frame. The door tilted inward at the top, held shut by the bottom hinge and deadbolt. I turned the lock and pulled. The door scraped against the frame as it opened. Mildred had already started her inspection. She walked to the main house with that same measured pace I remembered, like she had all the time in the world. I leaned against the doorframe and watched. She went to the front entrance first. The door stood open. I hadn't noticed that in the dawn light. She stepped inside without hesitation. Through the broken windows, I could see her moving from room to room on the ground floor. She'd stop, look around, then move on. No rushing, no surprise at the damage. After maybe 10 minutes, she came back out and circled around to the side of the house, to the basement door, or what was left of it. Even from the cabin, I could see the splintered boards. The chain and padlocks lay in the dirt, still connected but useless. The door itself, the parts still attached to the frame, hung open. Mildred stood there for a long time. She didn't go down the stairs, just looked. Then she reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out a small notebook, and wrote something. Put the notebook away and continued her circle around the house. She checked the shed with the generator, walked the perimeter of the property, staying just inside the tree line. Her head turned left and right as she walked, taking everything in. The whole inspection took about 30 minutes. When she started back toward the cabin, I straightened up, tried to make myself look less wrecked than I felt. She stopped a few feet from the door. Her eyes moved from the damaged hinges to my face. "Good morning, Daryl." "Morning." She reached into her jacket again. This time she pulled out a thick envelope. "Your final payment," she said, holding it out. I stared at the envelope. After everything that had happened, she was just paying me. Like this was normal. I took it. "Don't you want to know? No questions necessary," she said. "You completed your contract." That was it. No explanation. No acknowledgement of the night's chaos. Just business. "I'll need the satellite phone and keys," she said. "Right. Yeah." I turned back into the cabin. My duffel bag sat by the couch. I'd never really unpacked it. Always kept it ready, I guess. Some part of me had known. I grabbed the few things I'd scattered around. Couple shirts from the bedroom, my toothbrush from the bathroom, the book I'd been trying to read, stuffed them all in the bag. The satellite phone was still on the coffee table. I picked it up, looked at it. All those nights I'd held it, thumb on that call button, never pressed it. I handed it to Mildred along with the cabin keys. "The truck's in the garage," she said. "You can take it." "I've got my own truck," she nodded. "Very well." 20 minutes. That's all it took to pack up 6 months of my life. I carried my duffel to my pickup, tossed it in the passenger seat. Mildred stood by her Mercedes watching. Not supervising exactly, just watching. I climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. It turned over on the first try. One thing that had gone right. I put it in reverse, backed up, turned around. In the rearview mirror, I could see Mildred still standing there. The cabin with its broken door. The main house with its shattered windows and whatever had escaped from the basement. I shifted into drive and headed down the dirt road. I didn't look back again. The road seemed different in full daylight. Shorter somehow. Those 3 hours of driving to get here 6 months ago. It only took 90 minutes to get back to where the dirt met pavement. Maybe I'd been driving slower that first time, following those handwritten directions. Or maybe the property had wanted to seem farther away than it was. I turned onto the highway and pressed the accelerator. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Not much at first. just a tremor, but by the time I passed the first town, I had to grip harder to keep them steady. The adrenaline was wearing off. 6 months of tension, of following rules, of not asking questions, of surviving. It was all catching up. I drove straight through to Bozeman. Didn't trust myself to stop except for gas. At the station, I stood by the pump and watched normal people doing normal things. A woman arguing with her kids about snacks, a guy in a suit talking on his phone, nobody circling buildings, nobody pounding on doors, nobody trying to escape from basements. The sun was high and bright. Regular Montana summer day. I got back in the truck and kept driving. By afternoon, I'd made it to Bozeman. Found a motel on the edge of town, nothing fancy, but it had a bed and a door that locked properly, both hinges intact. I paid cash for 2 nights. The desk clerk barely looked at me. The room smelled like old carpet and cleaning products. I dropped my duffel on the floor, sat on the bed, looked at the envelope Mildred had given me, $8,000. Same as every payment, right on schedule. I added it to the $40,000 I'd already saved, $48,000 for 6 months of whatever that had been. I set the money on the nightstand and lay back on the bed, still in my clothes, still in my boots. I slept for 16 hours straight. When I woke up, it was morning again. Different morning, different place. I showered, changed clothes, tried to feel human again. The bank was a few blocks from the motel. I walked, needing to move after all that sleep. Inside, I filled out a deposit slip for the whole $48,000. The teller's eyes widened a bit, but she processed it without comment. "Will there be anything else?" she asked. "No, that's it." I left with a receipt and a bank balance that would keep me going for a while. Time to find normal work. Something simple. Something where the biggest worry was running out of inventory or dealing with a difficult customer. The hardware store had a help wanted sign in the window. I went in, asked for an application. The manager, a guy about my age named Steve, looked me over. "You know tools?" he asked. "Worked at the mill for 8 years. Yeah, I know tools." "When can you start?" "Tomorrow." He smiled. "Monday's fine. We'll get you set up with Jerry. He's been here forever, knows where everything is." Just like that, normal job acquired. I found an apartment the same week, small 1-bedroom above a bakery downtown. The smell of fresh bread every morning. Regular neighbors who said hello in the hallway. A door with 2 working hinges and no mysterious visitors after midnight. I called Jasmine once I was settled. "Finally," she said. "I've been worried. You haven't called in over a week." "Yeah, sorry. Job ended. Been busy moving." "Where are you now?" "Bozeman. Got a place downtown." "That's great. And work?" "Hardware store. Nothing exciting, but it's steady." We talked for half an hour. She told me about a new doctor at the hospital, drama with one of the nurses, plans for a camping trip with Mike, normal life stuff. I made the right responses, asked the right questions. "You sound better," she said near the end. "More like yourself." "Yeah, good to be back in civilization. That caretaker job, you never really talked about it much. What was it like?" I looked out my apartment window at the street below. People walking dogs, cars stopping at the light. "Not much to tell," I said. "Just maintenance work. Pretty boring, actually." 6 months of boring. Sounds rough. The money was good. Still, all alone out there. I don't know how you did it. "Kept busy," I said. "Anyway, I should go. Gotta figure out this apartment still." "Okay, but hey, I'm glad you're somewhere normal now. That job, I don't know. Something about it worried me." "Nothing to worry about. It's done." After we hung up, I sat at my small kitchen table and watched the street some more. A mother pushed a stroller past. A delivery truck double parked. Life happening the way it was supposed to. I never told Jasmine about that final night. Never told anyone. What would I say? That something had escaped from a basement. That shadows moved wrong outside my windows. That I'd sat on the floor for hours while things tried to break down my door. No, some things you keep to yourself. I worked at the hardware store, helped customers find the right screws, explained the difference between latex and oil-based paint, loaded bags of concrete into trucks. Jerry trained me well. After a few weeks, I knew where everything was too. Evenings, I'd walk around downtown, get dinner at the diner or pick up groceries. Read books, normal books, not trying to distract myself from sounds outside. Slept through the night without waking to check if footsteps had started circling. Sometimes I'd think about the property. Wonder if Mildred had found another caretaker, if she'd given them the same 6 rules, if they'd be able to follow them for 6 months like I had. Mostly, though, I tried not to think about it at all. The money sat in my bank account. I used it careful, made it stretch, paid rent, bought food, lived quiet. The hardware store job covered day-to-day expenses. The $48,000 was my cushion, my payment for surviving. Because that's what I'd done. Survived, followed the rules, didn't ask questions, made it through 6 months of whatever that place was. Now I had a normal life in a normal town with a normal job. No satellite phone, no curtains that had to stay closed after dark, no basement doors that shouldn't be opened. Just me in my small apartment above the bakery, trying to forget the sound of something breaking free.